It should be. It should work. It should be working good now. I restarted my phone as well, and I've left my phone by the window. Hello, buddy. Yes, when you think about it, yes, that's just what they say when you think about it. I mean, that's just what it is. What you going to do about it? That's just the way it is, buddy. You can't do anything about it, man. Yeah, it's a true story. Yeah, that's what I heard, anyway. Hello, buddy. Oh, how are my fans? Oh, my fans are good. My fans better than your fans. Your fans, spilly paint. Anyway, did anyone see about the mini manicure? I was banging on about the mini manicure for ages. I have unlimited, don't worry, I have unlimited data. I was banging on about the mini manicure for ages, and I thought everyone was ignoring me. Did you see about the mini manicure? Look, I was talking about AliExpress. I like AliExpress. Look, it's the mini manicure. Look, it was like £1.50 or something. Look, it's the mini manicure. And what does it do? You open it up, and it becomes little nail clippers. It's the mini manicure. Oh my God, so cool. I love AliExpress. I like cheap, good quality Chinese products. Don't you just love China? And it goes on your keyring. It's the mini manicure. Oh my God, so good. It's actually genuinely really good. Obviously, the thing is a bit small. It's a tiny bit small, but you've got it on your keyring. You always have nails. Because I always need to keep my nails short for playing piano or for guitar with my left hand. Yes. Yeah, Temu and AliExpress and all that sort of thing. They're good. It's called mini manicure. It's called mini manicure. Oh, that's so cheeky. That's so naughty. You imagine heavy black liner, airliner, eyeliner. Okay. Cool. I imagine fish and chips. What do anyone else imagine? Is it a game we're playing? I don't know, buddy. Maybe I could do a bit of guitar. Maybe I'll cut my nails. I need to shape my nails, though. I've got my thumb and these 3 fingers longer. I don't need to shape them for guitar. Oh, yes. Click the bell notifications. I'm always on live. And you can talk about all sorts of things. My piano was thrown away. I want to learn to sing. I want to learn to sing Titanium. Together. It's together. It's beta. Why not? I'm not beta, yeah? If you're gonna get some coochie, you got to prove you're not beta. Are you beta? I'm beta. Yes. Right, I'll carry on playing my video. I will allow the discussion to continue. Thanks, buddy. I was saying earlier, like, guys, I don't know. Oh, yeah, that's why everyone was ignoring me. I thought everyone was just ignoring me for ages. I was like, why is everyone just ignoring me and having their own discussion? I was saying all sorts of things. And then I was showing my mini manicure, and I was like, no one's interested. So I just carried on tidying. It's like you just come here to chat to one another. Yeah, I was like, why is everyone just blanking me? I was like, fine, fuck you guys then. I carried on tidying up. And I kept on coming back. Are they talking about the mini manicure yet? I was like, why is no one interested in the mini manicure? I thought it's the best thing ever. Yes. When you think about it. I was just saying, like, as well, like, you know, guys that have got issues with guys who dress have got issues in themselves. Because guys who are not into, like, that sort of stuff, they just don't care if a guy's wearing a dress or not. They're just not bothered. It doesn't bother them. Like I said, I went to Cash Converter, like in my Yves Saint Laurent dress or whatever, and no one paid me no attention. Like, they didn't care. They just treat me normally. They just didn't care. There's always guys that have their own issues going on. You want to see the mini manicure? Because I'm very happy about it. Well, I do like it. And here it is. It's the mini manicure, ladies and gentlemen. It's so highly intelligently devised when you think about it. That's not the mini manicure side. Look, it's the mini manicure. Look. Oh, my God. Such a good product. And then it opens up like this. So good. Look at that. And now you can give your nails a little keep. It's so intelligent, really. Yes, I like it. Right, I'm going to carry on tidying. You may discuss amongst yourselves, yeah? I'm done. I've been heard, yeah? So nice. Oh, I love my fans. I'm so wholesome. What, because I like the mini manicure? I think it's so fucking cool. It's the mini manicure. I find it so cheeky. They named it the mini manicure. sponsored to sell things. Yeah, I was thinking about doing like TikTok store because I'd like to review things as long as I can be honest about it. Like I could promote things as long as I like the product. If I don't like the product, I couldn't promote it. I just couldn't do it. I have to like it, like the mini manicure. Oh, I mean, just think about it. When you go out on the street and you need to cut your nails, oh my God, it's on your keyring. Mini manicure. Why not? Oh, I love my fans.
Literary works that were of a pornographic and erotic nature. He was condemned
Cross-dresser, makeup and everything. He's amazing.
For 32 years of his life.
I mean, some like if you look at ladyboys and stuff. That's why ladyboy porn is so popular. Some of them are just so gorgeous. They look so attractive. Lol, so great. It's the mini manicure. Anytime you need to cut your nails, it's right on your keyring. Still waiting on the ponytail. I can't. How can I do a ponytail like this? Look, my hair's too curly. I can't do a ponytail. Wait, let me get my hair claw. I'll try and find my hair claw. How do I do a ponytail with curly hair? Anyway, I'll be back in a moment. I need to do some things. I'm tidying my place a little bit. You can do a mini ponytail. Okay. I need to find the hair thing.
The word sadism is derived from his name, and the mental condition of sexual sadism disorder is also named after Sartre.
Like at the back or on top?
Sadism disorder is distinctly different from other mild forms of sadism that you may find occurring between consenting adults. People who suffer from sexual sadism disorder derive sexual pleasure from the extreme pain, suffering, or humiliation inflicted upon others without their consent. Now, why would a supposedly pious man like John Doe be reading the works of such a prominent sinner?
Like this?
Well, he could be reading about him out of disgust.
I can't see myself.
These books as an affirmation of his loyalty and the devolution of society. Or perhaps this is an indicator that John experiences not only gratification from his killings.
Yeah, it's cross-dressing good therapy.
As well. I believe we can find reinforcement.
I also like women's clothes more.
Towards the end of the
I think they look better.
Somerset is questioning John about
Michael Barry, top. Okay.
And the fact that he undoubtedly enjoys his work. John freely admits to the fact and states that there's nothing wrong with a man taking pleasure in his work. I believe that both are true. That John may have read the works of the Marquis to reinforce his own beliefs, while finding a literary outlet to satisfy his urges. I think this is a clever detail inserted into the film by the creators to urge us into this direction. But if this is all theory on my part, I could be wrong. Let me know what you think about this notion down below. The last book we're going to take a look at least for the moment, is Of Human Bondage. The only connection to the film I could find while scouring the internet was the fact that the creators likely inserted this book on the list because the author of the book's name is William Somerset, the same as Morgan Freeman.
Like these?
But upon looking into the themes of the novel, I found that its central themes are realism versus idealism, humans in bondage, and the illusion of free will. I'm unsure if the creators intended for the themes of this novel to apply to John, or if it was just put into the film as an Easter egg.
Cindy's. Nice, that's a sexy name.
Philosophy, nonetheless. Let's look at each theme in turn.
You like it, yeah? It's cute.
Which I will provide a link to on screen and down in the description, describes the theme of idealism versus realism as it pertains to this novel as follows.
That's what I'm watching at the moment. I'll be back with you guys in a memento. I'm just tidying a bit. I need to take care of my body. I need to do more exercise.
The more that he gets out into the world and comes into contact with actual people, the more tenuous his grasp on those ideals become until they slip entirely, and he embraces a more realistic view of the true nature of most people. I think perhaps John may have at one point had an idealistic view on life, as many of us do, especially in our younger years. But his philosophy has evolved over time into a combination of the two. He views the world as it is, and people for what they are, reducing them down to devices to gaze into what he believes defines them more than anything else. But at the same time, he lives in his own idealized world, where he has been given a divine mission by God to hand out punishment to these individuals. The next theme, human bondage, and the title of the book are in reference to a work called Ethics by Benedictus de Spinoza. In the fourth part of Ethics, Spinoza theorizes that domination by human passions, which he refers to as effects, defines human bondage, an enslavement to one's emotions, so to speak. I feel the novel Of Human Bondage, being an example of this concept, would have likely given John affirmation that humans are weak creatures that have become slaves to the will of their own emotions, channeling their wanton passions into sin. Now, the final theme of the novel, the illusion of free will, doesn't apply to John's victims, but to John himself. I don't think John believes that the population is unable to abstain from sin as if they had no free will. but rather chooses not to, and that's why he's set about in punishing them. But for John himself, he specifically states that he was chosen, which indicates that he believes he has no say in the matter, and is thus incapable of straying from his mission. Again, a lot of theory on my part, but I thought at the very least this novel and its themes were worth mentioning. If anyone has any other insights into this particular work that could relate to John, let us know down in the comments. That's the end of the library list, and I think we've learned a great deal of information about John from just that list alone. But now let's head into his apartment to see how John lived and operated to find out what we can there. Right away, the most striking thing is the darkness of the space, lit by only dim lamps that are reminiscent of sconces along the walls of an abbey. This gives his apartment a somber feel, and the black walls add to the gloom that permeates his living space. The windows are all shuttered, and John likely has them this way to keep wandering eyes from viewing the madness that is his living space, and to shut out the world around him. At first glance, the apartment seems like a creepy place you'd expect to find a few pentagrams in, but I think the way he set up his apartment is supposed to be more reminiscent of an old world monastery, dark and dimly lit by candles, allowing for its only monk to keep out the burdens of the world and live his life in silent peace within his nest. We're given a shot of various tools he has set neatly in order, another peek into the obsessive planning John has gone through over what I'm sure is many years to aid in his work. Further into the apartment, Somerset finds drawers filled with holy water, rosaries, empty bottles of aspirin, and strangely enough, half a pair of dentures. I think this shows that not only has John gone so far as to remove his fingerprints, as we learn later on, but that he's taken his teeth out as well to hide away his dental records. In the center of this same room is a pommel horse, indicating that John either has some skill in gymnastics, or more likely uses it as a source of exercise he can utilize without leaving his home. On the surrounding walls are images of his victims, and of course, the most striking thing about his sleeping quarters is the oversized neon cross surrounded by various pieces of Catholic iconography above his bed. Nearby is a replica of Jesus on the cross as well, no doubt giving our most pious monk a feeling of comfort as he lays next to it at night. Though his room is rather cluttered and dreary, it seems to be clean for the most part. We get a shot of Detective Mills rifling through his clothing, which are protected by plastic bags, reinforcing this notion and indicating that John to some extent has an obsessive compulsion with cleanliness and his appearance. After all, cleanliness is next to godliness. As well as the images of his victims on the walls, we find trophies dedicated to his kills, showing that John is perhaps guilty of another sin besides his confessed one at the end of the film, the sin of pride. Taking pleasure in one's work is one thing. Keeping idols to bask in is another. In his bathroom, we find a departure from cleanliness, perhaps showing us that the further we go into John's mad machinations, the further the order of his life devolves into a managed chaos. In this makeshift darkroom, we find not only pictures of his kills, but the photos he took of Detective Mills as well. I'm sure John has other photos of his victims' day-to-day lives lying around as well, using them to track their routines and stalk them, cementing the notion that this planning has taken months, if not years. Our next room is the greatest indicator of this, where John houses thousands of notebooks that he's written in over the years, documenting his day-to-day life and the sinners he encounters therein. Now, I paused the film to read some of what was in these notebooks, and honestly, while it's interesting, it doesn't do too much good to sweat over the details of these notebooks, in my opinion. As Detective Somerset says, they're just mind poured out onto paper. There are certain things squared off at points, but they still constitute the ravings about random people and their sins, rather than anything of too much substance. At the very most, I'm sure if we look through them all, we'd find bits and pieces of his own philosophy strewn in, but they would mostly consist of his rage-induced observations of the perceived sinners around him. We are given a sample of what little reference to his ideology lies within when Detective Somerset reads out a portion of one of the notebooks to Detective Mills. What sick, ridiculous puppets we are. What a gross little stage we dance on. Dancing, fornicating, not a care in the world, not knowing that we are not what was intended. This is a reference to the original sin of Adam and Eve, which transformed humankind into beings that God had not intended them to be, which led to the sad state of the sinners he sees around him in the present day. The only other interesting thing to take note of from his writings is that he's grouped the sections of these notebooks into different sins, indicating that there is at least a certain order to what he's writing. He keeps several large books in his room as well, likely theological in nature, showing that his research extends outside of what we found on his library record. In summary of his living situation, the man lives like a hermetic monk who spent who knows how many countless years collecting tools and knowledge to further the machinations of his plot in his holy abode, walling himself off from society in an attempt to escape the sins of the outside world. He lives among the idols of his Lord and of his murders, basking in the glow of his God and his work in seclusion. Now that we've examined John's lifestyle and research, let's take a look at the murders he commits to come to an even better understanding of his thought process behind his plan. Before we get into each killing, though, I'd like to bring your attention to something we haven't discussed yet that will prove useful for some of the kills we examine going forward. And that's the counterpart to the 7 deadly sins, the 7 virtues. It's been said that the cure for each of the 7 deadly sins is each of the 7 virtues that are the direct opposites. To overcome gluttony, you must practice temperance. For greed, you must have charity. For sloth, you must be diligent. For lust, you must practice chastity. For pride, you must show humility. For wrath, you must have patience. And for envy, you must have gratitude for what you have. As I said, these 7 so-called cures for the 7 deadly sins will play into some of the kills we examine going forward, so keep them in mind as we continue. Now let's go in order from John's first kill. Bound and meant to eat himself to death. This kill is a gruesome sight to behold. While the murder itself shows us right away the lengths John is willing to go to prove his point, what's most important about this murder is the quote John leaves behind the fridge. Long is the way, and hard out of hell that leads up to the light. As Detective Somerset points out, this line is from the epic poem Paradise Lost by John Milton, and the line itself serves as a harbinger for the beginning of John's plans. But the beauty of using Paradise Lost here is also in the theme of the poem itself, which Milton describes in Book 1 as his attempt at teaching the ways of God to men. I believe this fits perfectly with John Doe's motives, as this is exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to show the world that sinners are not only deplorable in his own eyes, but in the eyes of God as well, punishing those earthly vessels just as God will once they arrive at the gates of his kingdom, only to be cast down into eternal torment in hell. This again shows John's diligence in crafting his worldview and his plan, showing us that it's not simply a quote to drive home a point, but a window into the mind and thoughts of John himself. Unfortunately for our poor gluttonous fellow, he's not offered the chance for temperance, as he's made to eat until he dies. On to our next victim. The greedy lawyer Eli Gould is found lying in prostration over a stack of books in front of a scale, where he was made to exact a pound of flesh from his own body in exchange for his freedom. In Shakespeare's play The Merchant of Venice, a moneylender named Shylock gives a loan to Antonio Bassanio and requests that if he cannot pay back the loan in full at the date he specifies, Antonio must offer him a pound of flesh. No bone, no cartilage, but flesh. In this play, this is obviously meant to punish the greedy Bassanio, and John does so in the same way for Eli Gould. But as Eli could have won his freedom for exacting his pound of flesh, I believe this was how John offered Eli the chance of redemption for his sins through its corresponding virtue. Now you may be thinking, how is giving a pound of one's own flesh charity? Well, it isn't, but these virtues have alternate ways of qualifying as a virtue where charity is not applicable. In this case, that alternate virtue is sacrifice. If this lawyer can sacrifice his pound of flesh to pay for his greed, he'll be let free, giving his victim a chance to redeem himself through a divine virtue. The fact that this man is laid out in prostration is how Somerset comes to the conclusion that what John is doing is in fact preaching. Mills points out that he thinks it's punishment. I believe they're both right. John is preaching through punishment, educating the masses through grisly and sickening sermons. I'd like to point out a detail in this crime scene that the detectives conclude is meant for them to make a connection to the man's wife, the mask of blood around her eyes. I think this particular distinction for what we see on the frame is important. A mask. There's a story by Edgar Allan Poe called The Mask of the Red Death, which is a story about a disease that is ravaging an unknown land, and a nobleman who attempts to shield himself and his noble friends from this disease by walling all of them off in his keep. The nobleman proceeds to have a masquerade ball to entertain his friends, having them go through the 7 different colored rooms of his home. At midnight, an unknown man appears walking through the crowd in a dark blood-stained cloak and a red mask. The nobleman, Prospero, ends up chasing this man through the 7 different colored rooms of his home, and upon confronting the man in the mask in the final room, he meets his untimely end. The partygoers then proceed to assault this man, only to find beneath his mask and cloak there is nothing, an allusion to the disease that spreads its way through these people, an unseen force of death and doom. While yes, this clue left by John was certainly meant to point the detectives to the next link in the chain that is John's plan, I believe this story fits well with not only John, but his focus on the 7 deadly sins. It's not always agreed upon that the 7 rooms in the Mask of the Red Death are linked to the 7 deadly sins. But in this case, I think this interpretation is more than appropriate. As for the figure in the mask, an invisible threat in plain sight leading its way through the crowd, is just like John before his reveal. This clue, of course, leads us to our next victim, the drug dealer and pederast made to suffer and waste away for an entire year before being found, and is, in my opinion, John Doe's cruel murder of them all. Victor is found bound and broken beyond repair in his own home. Documentation of his horrible transformation into nothing more than a sickening shell of a human being over the course of a year, laid in view for all to see. The level of demented dedication and determination John has to be able to come into a man's home for an entire year and care for him as he tortures him is beyond gut-wrenching. Don't get me wrong, the man is a criminal and a pedophile and deserves to be punished, but this goes far and beyond cruel and unusual punishment. Interesting to note in this scene is California, the SWAT leader, leaning in to whisper in Victor's ear to tell him he got what he deserves, showing that it's not too far-fetched to make the claim that a good number of people might be in fact thankful for John's work. This case is one that had no chance of redemption through any of the 7 virtues, as there was no way a man so thoroughly incapable of escaping his punishment to have a chance at redemption. Our next victim, Our Lady of Lust, is a different story, however. While I don't believe she was capable of providing herself redemption, the man who killed her may have. If he had shown chastity and chose to let John end his life, perhaps this woman may have been spared. John may have ended her life the same way, but I like to think that had this man chose to be chaste, this woman would have survived. In the end, though, whether he or this woman died, it would still serve John's ends, as the death of a lustful sinner would have still occurred. This kill is yet another example of the lengths John will go to prove his point, having an elaborate contraption manufactured to really sell the brutal fate that he envisions awaits all sinners. Then, of course, is our beautiful, prideful model, who was quite literally handed a chance at redemption. This woman could have shown humility and chosen to live her life with disfigurement, but just as I'm sure John predicted, she chooses to end her life rather than go on living this way. It's safe to say at this point that John is nothing short of a mastermind, and his elaborate plan and its fulfillment is impressive to say the least. But at last we've come down to the final act of John's macabre production, and this is where I believe it's time we move on to discuss the man himself, starting with his self-revelation to Detectives Somerset and Mills. Now, aside from the blood on his clothes, the thing most notable about John Doe is nothing, and that's quite something. A plain white button-up shirt, a pair of slacks and dress shoes, and a rather ordinary hairstyle atop a plain and unassuming face is what makes this man's appearance more terrifying than an outwardly vicious character. John Doe is in every sense a John Doe. If you saw him walking down the street, or standing in line in front of you at the grocery store, you likely wouldn't think twice. Why, you might not even notice him at all. A momentary fragment of memory lost quickly beneath the rest of your worries. He's nobody. No birth certificate, no DNA records, no real teeth, and no fingerprints, recorded or physical. A person couldn't be closer to nothing if they tried. The detectives assume he's well educated, and he very well could be, but he could have also been self-taught, a man whose life involves only what he himself has made it into. Though John is physically and socially the perfect nobody, mentally he's very much his own distinct person. We've had a good look so far at John's philosophies, and we'll get more yet, but now it's time we take a look at his personality. We get precious few lines from John at the end of the film, but throughout all of it, we get a good sense of the kind of person he is. When he's musing on his works with the detectives at the onset of their journey to his intended final destination, he becomes mystified as he speaks of his work and how it will be studied for years to come, showing again the sin of pride as he boasts about his accomplishments. He's a cocky, arrogant snob who looks down on everyone around him as nothing more than worthless sinners, evaluating people at their worst and summing up their entire character based on their flaws. He's a calm and collected individual for the most part, only prone to spurts of anger when it serves a purpose or when he finds himself on the defense in explaining his twisted worldview. He gloats over and taunts the detectives for even bothering to assume that they could have found him without him allowing them to. Altogether, John projects himself as a confident, snide, righteous, and unforgiving man who's sure in himself and of his perceptions of the people around him. The man is also, without a doubt, insane to a certain degree, as when Detective Mills asks him a ponderous question about his insanity, he replies that Mills is only choosing to view him as insane because it's comforting to him. John states to Mills that he in fact believes he has been chosen by God himself, and after Somerset asks him if he's doing the Lord's good work, John fittingly replies that the Lord works in mysterious ways. This denial of insanity is often said to be one of the hallmarks of the truly insane, as they themselves are incapable of understanding that they're insane. This is not always the case, but it's certainly true for some, and I believe it is partially true for John. He's clearly delusional, But he does state to his lawyer that he will go for the insanity plea if the detectives don't follow his wishes, indicating that he's not totally insane to the point that he has no sense of self-preservation, or as we've seen quite well already, that he lacks the ability to scheme and plot at an incredibly high functioning level. This is a great look at the kind of man we can view John as from what we're given. Now let's finish what he started and take a look at our last two sinners of his plot. Throughout this entire long ordeal, John has been many steps ahead of the men attempting to capture him. He's gone to great lengths to conceal his identity, match his presence in the face of his victims and would-be witnesses, and crafted a plan so foolproof that if he had wished to avoid capture, he likely would have gotten away with all of it. But John had never intended to get away with it. Through years of stalking, gathering resources, and research, John crafted this plan with one motive in mind: to prove to the world that within all of us lay a sinner, including himself. He even went so far as to plan ahead, planning to use whichever detectives he found pursuing him in this plan, finding the perfect specimen in Detective Mills. Here at the end, we're made to believe John's plan has already been completed, and we're only waiting to find the last two bodies. But then we learn that John has committed yet another horrifying act, murdering and dismembering the wife of Detective Mills. What he says here is telling of his sadism. He tells Detective Mills he tried to play husband when he called upon his wife, and taste the life of a simple man. One can only imagine what he means. He could have raped her, tortured her, or played with her any way he liked before he killed her, leaving yet another bad taste in our mouths. Here we have a wrathful Detective Mills, goaded into making an impossible choice: vengeance or forgiveness. But he is given a choice: the chance at letting virtue be his guide rather than sin, the chance to have patience and to forgive John Doe. But through the unceasing taunts and masterful persuasion of John Doe, Detective Mills fails. In one fell swoop, John condemns both himself and Detective Mills for the sins they have committed, showing the world what it's become, leaving a brutal vision of torment for all sinners to fear with the completion of his plan, a vision of what awaits them at the end of their days if they do not turn from their sinful ways. While he leaves behind this message, he himself moves on to greet the God whose will he believes he's carried out on earth, at peace with himself and the way he was chosen to follow. So in the end, he did get away with it, away to a world without sin, into the arms of his Creator, who he surely believes will not only forgive him for his own sins, but applaud his work as he walks through the gates of heaven and into paradise. So what do all of these things make John Doe? They make him a scholar of Catholic thought, an expert in sin, vice, and virtue, a mad monk whose pessimistic outlook on the world and the people in it fester an obsessive need to cleanse this mortal plane of its most vile offenders, and bring a twisted light to the eyes of those who would see his truth. He's a mastermind of his own making, and a man of little import outside the plan he so dutifully carried out in the name of his Lord. He's nobody. A man with an unknown name and background who's hidden beneath the shadows to exact his revenge upon a world ignorant of its wrongdoing. He's a righteous zealot of the work